Joining me now at the desk for a company update is Group 5 Chief Executive Mike Upton. Perhaps you can also tell us how impressed you are with our new studios.
No, it must be a real sort of coup to be able to get these premises right in the heart of the JSE. Well done.
So true. Thank
Very
you
smart,
so much.
yeah.
Well, we're looking forward to your company update
Okay.
results presentation soon taking place here.
Sure.
Mike, it's good to speak to you, especially since the controversy of the collusion in the construction sector is now a thing of the past, I'd like to believe. So looking positive, infrastructure developments from a South African perspective. We always hear about the delay as well as the tough working relationship between the private sector and government. Are things beginning to change?
I think, there's been a sort of 4 or 5 year process in cleaning up the industry, and, we were first out of the blocks there some years back, and, we were sort of the whistleblower, if you like. Not everything is being buttoned up with the Comcom, I don't think, but it is essentially though that, we're moving on as an industry. Obviously the damage that was done in terms of the break of trust between governments and this industry is something really concerned us for a long time. So we need to join hands and build that bridge again, because the infrastructure needs of the country, of the region in fact, are reliant on us finding a solution going forward. And that must be a more transformed, more transparent industry, but also to be aligned with the national agenda. And I think this new breed of CEOs, which is running the industry now, I think is really ready to partner governments in that quest, for infrastructure rollout.
Is government meeting you at the party?
There have been some conversations through the industry bodies. It's early days. Obviously, the elections have come, so we'll wait to see what happens possibly in a month or so. But we're encouraged by the interaction, and I think certainly there's a wish on both sides to find a way forward.
Indeed. Finding a way forward, a unique area that you're moving towards is energy projects. You have worked with the Kusile power plant together with S.African, but you're also delving into other energy infrastructure projects. Walk us through some of those. Yes,
Group 5 is really focused on 7 sectors, and the 2 new sectors really for us, relatively so, has really been oil and gas and power, which is really, so energy, if you like, as a topic. So in oil and gas, Group 5 has been a refinery services organisation for many years, but in more recent times we've been involved in large projects in terms of oil and gas projects. We're doing offshore rigs and all the rest of it. But the really exciting one has been, I think for the last 5 or 6 years, we've been in the power generation field. So Group 5 has probably produced nearly 2,000 megawatts of power, both in South Africa and outside.
Water that down for us. How many homes can that light up?
Oh, that's a lot of homes. That's a medium-sized sort of city, actually, yeah. So we've done about 7 power plants, 2 in Nigeria. We're doing 1 in Mozambique. We've done 1 in Botswana. We've done work here for industrialists. And we're certainly very active in the renewable energy program. We're doing 4 of the renewable projects, 2 wind farms and 2 solar projects. And we're very hopeful of soon being involved in more of those. Also now looking much further afield, renewable energy is now beginning to take holds in Africa generally. So East and West Africa are looking for solar projects and wind projects as well. So a big part of our future will be in energy projects. That's as we see it.
Those renewable energy projects, is it easier to get into them because they're privatized?
I wouldn't say it's easy. We're not actually the developer. We're an EPC contractor there. So, we sort of wrap those things as a design and build contractor. And it's been very, very competitive. So one's had to build a track record and make sure that you understand your cost base and also all of the technology. Make sure you've got all the wherewithal to be able to engineer and execute these projects. So it's been a learning curve for us, but I think we're probably now one of the most experienced of our sort of peer group in the power sector in South Africa.
And the skill set necessary for that, because in Africa we used to coal as the primary source of power. So when it comes to renewable energy, have you had to look abroad for
We've
talent?
had to build those over about 5 or 6 years, build the skill sets. And I think we've done that now. We've now got a track record on about 4 or 5 different types of fuel, whether it be, let's say, oil and gas or gas-fired, wind farms, solar, even nuclear. So that's our portfolio going forward, is to be much bigger in the energy space.
Well, definitely a strong one to tap into. You mentioned several countries, Nigeria, Botswana, as well as Mozambique.
Yes.
Is it easier to work with those governments in your experience versus perhaps home?
Well, we haven't worked a lot for governments outside of South Africa. Maybe the SADC environments, but we've worked mostly for the private sector.
Is that a conscious decision? And if so,
it was a conscious decision, and I think as time goes on, we need to be more engaged with governments going forward, and we are engaged now with many projects which are in an early phase of development, really related to transport projects, where we need to be involved with government. But most of our government involvement has been really the SADC region, obviously the South African government as well.
Mm-hmm. I want us to explore the oil and gas opportunities that you've mentioned. We're all fully aware of the oil and gas activities in the Karoo in South Africa, but
yes.
Unfortunately, legislation is holding that back
Sure.
ever so slightly with the government-free stake in those opportunities. Would you be joining the activities over there?
There's two big opportunities in our region. One is Mozambique, where there's massive gas finds, and we're actively looking at those. We're engaged with all the major players. We've got a commitment there to mobilize into northern Mozambique. So that's happening. And then obviously the shale gas environments, we're keeping close to that. We're talking to those major players there who are involved, and they're beginning to ask for tenders, for estimates, if you like, in some of the work. So we would hope to be involved, absolutely.
You haven't mentioned much about your usual infrastructure projects, roads, bridges. Why is that? Or is energy just a new opportunity that you're focusing on now?
We spoke about the new sectors, but there's the older sectors or more traditional sectors, which will be roads and buildings and that sort of thing. It's the market's been quite quiet, I must tell you, that infrastructure in South Africa has been quite quiet for quite a few years now. So there's a lot more capacity than is required at the market at the moment. There's a dearth of large projects, so it's become very, very difficult at the moment. So we've seen most of our sort of excitement, if you like, in terms of the immediate short-term futures being outside the country. But obviously we hold ourselves available, for the big South African rollout when that might happen. But it hasn't really happened for us at the moment.
And perhaps from a continental perspective, with organizations like the Development Bank of South Africa, AFDB as well, are you seeing a lot more private partnerships taking place there?
That's the future, I think, of infrastructure in Africa, is private sector investments in infrastructure. So there's an unlimited list of projects, but there's not an unlimited amount of funding. And to join the funding with the need is a real opportunity, but that's not easy at the moment, absolutely.
From a private sector perspective, is that too much of a risk for you to take on, maybe partaking in a job or infrastructure project where there's no guarantee of making a return on your investment?
Well, that's the point. If we were to be investors in a project, we would want to see very clearly the off-take agreements and how we might service the debt. And that's always the challenge, of course. Are these sort of projects bankable or not? And that's why I think in the future in Africa, one needs to define which are bankable projects for commercial money, and which are projects which must be state-funded, which may not be bankable, but bankable, which drive economic growth. And if we get that right, that there will be an opportunity for everyone.
So from your perspective, are you taking care of your shareholders first and foremost?
That's the idea. That's my job.
Indeed. Well, it does come with being a listed company.
Sure.
But perhaps if we speak to you from in a year's time in these studios once again, what can shareholders hold you accountable to?
I think we would have made some progress on our strategy of being much more involved in Africa, in more of the sectors, more of the group's organisation being embedded and indigenized in Africa. I think that's what we'll be able to show in a year's time.
So Africa's the big growth story here.
Absolutely.